Hey everybody, happy Thursday. Just sitting out here doing some work, and I thought I would do an amendment. If you've been following the news lately in regard to Canadian interest rates, which also will play in with American interest rates, this is a follow-up to a video I did a year and a half ago telling you what's going to happen as far as how interest rates are going to move. And the reason I'm doing this, much like my reasoning last time, is to avoid getting into a trap. Life is all about good decisions, and sometimes a little prudence can keep you out of some major issues. And well, it looks like there's something that's unfolding right now, which may not be intentional. I'm not going to get out the conspiracy handbook, but nonetheless, it is happening. And the way it is being touted in the media, people are going to look at it as being a savior, when it is, once again, the biggest piece of cheese into the mousetrap. So that's all I can say about that. So stay put for a second. I'm going to get out a chart of the 10-year Treasury, and then you can understand where I'm coming from. Okay guys, so here is the chart I've shown you before. This is the 10-year Treasury. This is what all mortgage rates in North America and largely the world are based upon. The American 10-year Treasury. Let's go through it. We have the low in 1970, when just before we get in 71, we went off the gold standard. We have the high in 1981, when they were doing everything they could to try and keep the value in the American currency, because it was being printed like bananas to pay for the Vietnam War and other things that were going on in America, because they had closed the gold window and people had lost faith in the American dollar. That was the high, and since then we've been in a downtrend. If you refer, I have told you in the past about the Elliott wave pattern, which is a very commonly accepted pattern that is something you can expect with the movement of any financial instrument or anything that can be charted, whether it's birth rates, opinions, housing prices, or stocks, or gold or silver, all that kind of stuff, or oil, whatever. So 1, 2, 3, that's the low in 2020, coming at in May. And we're looking for 4, because we got one more big leg that's going to happen down. And I know you don't necessarily believe it, but believe it or not, we're going to negative interest rates sometime like around 2030, 20 to 2040. So anyway, yeah. See this little blip down that had recently? So if we just expand this chart a little bit. Back in September, October, we had interest rates peak. The American Treasury is at 5%, which means our mortgages were at 7%. It's jerked around a little bit. It's come back up here. And now recently, of course, as you know, the Bank of Canada just lowered the rate. This American Treasury rate is going to drop. As you can see, it's probably going to honor what's called the month moving average and the day moving average. It's going to probably going to coincide, and it looks like it'll be right around 2024. Like we're going to have, this is coincidentally, this is when the American election is going to be happening. So basically right after it, there's going to be some kind of legislation to lower rates to a real low level, or significantly lower. So you're going to see a couple things happen. A, it's going to boost the value of real estate prices, and everyone's going to feel like some euphoria. Okay, markets move in euphoria because, if you recall, the euphoria of the house prices, that was everybody moving impulsively, and that's a huge impulsive thing that that's what markets do. If you've lived long enough, you've heard lots of stories, whether it was the dot-com bubble in the 99s to the price of Bitcoin or anything. Everything can move to an extreme level where people are just like flabbergasted as to how high things have gotten. So bear that in mind. So, but like I said, this looks like it's going to fall down here to at least this level. So you're going to see mortgage rates drop by another 1 to 1.5%. And everyone's going to think, oh, happy days are here again. However, this is the trap. This is going to be number 4 in this. So markets move in macro and micro. This is the macro Elliott wave pattern. 1, 2, 3, looking for 4. But there's also micro, meaning that, so for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the micro inside the macro. So what we're seeing here is we have 1, 2, 3 at the top recently. We're looking for 4 right around here. And then the 5 is going to be somewhere on this trend line. Either this trend line or possibly terrifying this trend line up here. If you recall, I showed you this level, this lower level here, which is at 7%, which means mortgage rates here will be 9%, or quite possibly a rise up to 9.5%, 10%. Always accept perhaps the most extreme. And if that is the case, we could see that happening by 2030. By 2030, we could be seeing interest rates at 10% in the treasuries, and which means our mortgage rates at 13%. So you have to think about what your risk tolerance is. So what are you going to do about that? This is all just hypothetical. This is not investment advice. This is just some things you could consider. If you are currently locked in a mortgage and you can't get out, you're going to see property values rise again very, very quickly. When it reaches this line, we don't know where in the line it's going to be. This would be a great point if you can get out of your house and just put the money in the bank, and if you can rent somewhere longer term, that's one option. B, try and pay down your house. Get it when it gets down here. Get the longest mortgage you can. You can get 10-year mortgages in Canada. It wouldn't be a bad idea. They are expensive, but next to what's going to be happening, it'll be cheap, because what we're looking at basically happening is you're going to have a drawdown to like about this 3.2% on the treasury, and then it looks like we're going to get a real spike up to into this 10%. Like it's, if you look at this spike, you see how fast this can happen. Look at this decline. This low point in 1980 was at 9.5%. By a year later, it was at 16%. That's almost 100% rise. So that's how fast interest rates can rise. Look how fast they can go, okay? And I really see that happening. And that's why, you watch in the media how they're talking about all this relief and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that they don't believe it, but there are highly paid chartists at the Bank of Canada and other banks actually, who see the writing on the wall. Do I think they're being paid off? I don't know. It's bottom line is, from a standpoint of prudence, everyone who writes a new mortgage between now and 2025, unless they're have incredible risk tolerance, are going to see their mortgage rates double or triple, or mortgage payments double or triple, and they're going to potentially lose them. If you had bought a house down here and you're starting to renew right now, there's a lot of people that are going to be losing their homes, et cetera, et cetera. And this is just the chart. The chart does not lie. It has no opinion. It is not coulda, shoulda, woulda, because people talk about how they could lower interest rates, like the governments could, but the governments their hands are tied, because interest rates are directly tied to what the world is willing to do in regard to lending America, and by default Canada, money. And the only way to entice people is with higher interest rates. So that's part of the macro situation. Now, on the flip side of this, if you have lots of dry powder, meaning you have lots of money, basically just watch for this trend line to be honored. A good place to buy, like when there'll be blood in the water, is when we have interest rates, like when mortgage rates are like 10%. Houses, the value of houses right now, it's going to be ridiculous as far as how much value they're going to lose. That'll be a great time to buy. And if you can really keep your powder dry till about 2030, I believe there's going to be a lot of excellent options out there in the street in 2030 to buy houses for pennies on the dollar. So, but then what's going to happen is, because again, there's something bigger is going to happen here. As I mentioned in my previous video, I believe we are going to negative interest rates, because something's going to happen with the American dollar. It's going to be, they always flail around before currency has changed, and I believe there's going to be some kind of currency upset right around 2030 to 2035. So none of this is financial advice. This is just my opinion, but it's hard to argue with this chart. If you recall earlier, this is the Fibonacci time frame that I told you about here, and the way it works is that, so for example, we draw from the bottom in 71 to the high in 81, and then it forecasts major turns in the market going forward. So we had a major turn in the market in 2003, like that was a bottom, and then it went up for 3 years. And then most recently, it has forecasted the top we had, the nature of this top in 2024. Now, if we move that forward just a bit, because the problem with the Fibonacci time expansion is that it does become exponential over a period of time. But if we move it forward with the same measurement, we're trying to look for cohesion in the market. And like as far as, it's uncanny how some of these things will move sometimes. And I'm just looking to see if there's a possibility. So there's one possibility here around what I was saying about 2030, looking for something to be up here around the 10%. You have to remember, if the 10-year treasury is at 10%, interest rates are going to be like 13. So yeah, all I can say is don't fall into the trap. So there it is. Like I said in the video, there's a lot of choices you can make in regard to this. If you're already locked into something, you're going to see a little blip up in the value of your real estate. This is not investment advice, but this will probably be one of the last times over this next 6 months to a year where real estate is going to slightly appreciate. And because the other side of high interest rates is depreciation. And remember, the Bank of Canada's #1 goal is to fight inflation. One of the ways they can fight inflation, at least on paper, is saying, oh, look at how much housing has gone down in price. Even though the byproduct of that is everyone who got locked in has now been eviscerated by those rising rates. So, what can I say? Again, none of this is investment advice. It's giving you an idea of where we are in the interest rate landscape, which ties into the most intimate investment you'll ever make, and that's your home. And like I said, there's a very large trap afoot, which is going to put some serious blood in the water coming up. So, I have done my part. The rest is up to you.